Hi, good evening. Welcome to the latest edition of Tarloke Talks. And I have the honour and privilege of talking to a Mr. John James, who most famously played Jeff Colby in the soap Dynasty. I hope you enjoy. Well, hello. Good evening.
Hello, Tarloke.
That is correct, yeah.
Nice to meet you, Tarloke. How are you?
I'm very, very well. Trying not to fangirl.
Oh, don't worry about it. By the end of this, we'll be friends.
Oh, great. That's great. But
Tarloke, where are you located?
I am in Liverpool in the UK.
Liverpool, beautiful.
And I've been a fan of Dynasty probably the majority of my life.
Oh, wonderful.
My mum was absolutely soap mad when I was younger, so we grew up watching things like Falcon Crest, Dallas, Dynasty, Knots Landing, Santa Barbara, all the biggies. I came in sort of halfway through, so but I've spent my adult life trying to catch up, and I've got this to show you.
Oh my goodness, the Dynasty collection.
Yeah, you made the cover of season 8.
There you go.
But yeah, it's such an honor to have you on. It's been all Dynasty since you agreed to do this. So I've been catching up on. I've watched the reunion. I've watched the Dynasty on Oprah cast. And a few other little snippets. So I've got a mixture of questions. I've also watched Axcellerator too.
Oh, good. Well, that's the last time I was in London.
Yeah, watched that this morning. So I've got to ask you about that too. So yeah, a mixture of what I want to know and a mixture of the fans. I've got questions from the Dynasty, official Dynasty Facebook page and the...
Sure, and I just started this social media. My daughter, is an actress, and she's on a series called SWAT.
Yes.
And so she said you should start. I'm not big on it, and I just every now and then I think I only have about 1,900 followers or something. So we can mention my Instagram if any of your fans or followers want to join that.
Yeah, I'll put that in. What's going to happen is I'm going to upload this to YouTube afterwards. Like I said in my email, I'm a small growing channel. It's picking up, weekly, but I'll at you and I'll put your address, your Instagram address.
Piers Morgan started somewhere, right, Tarloke?
Absolutely right. I'm not trying to pretend to be Piers Morgan.
But you never know.
You never know. But I kind of just go off. I don't write questions down for myself. I kind of remember a lot of Dynasty anyway, so hopefully this will be lots of fun. So, and I didn't know until last week that your name is John James Anderson. No idea. So that's a new one on me.
Sure. Are we recording now? Should we start now, or?
Yeah, we are recording now. Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Well, yes, my given name is Anderson, but when I started, there was already a John Anderson in the Union, and as you know, you can't have the same name, because if you happen to appear in either a play together or the same movie, you would have two people with the same name.
Yeah.
So consequently, I took my middle name, James.
Oh, it's a great name. So I understand you were born in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. You then spent some time in Chicago, and then eventually you moved to Connecticut with your family.
Yes.
And your father, Herb, was a big sort of radio personality presenting a show out of New York. And you would go as a toddler to watch him, do his thing.
Oh, he's actually in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because his radio station back in the 1960s started what we call top 40 here in the States, which were the top singles selling. And they were a huge station. They had a huge audience on AM radio in the States. As a matter of fact, if there's a movie called Pirate Radio, and I believe one of the characters in that movie was named Herb Oscar Anderson, my father. That was his stage name. And pirate radio, as you know, is that they went offshore on a boat and they broadcast music they wanted to play that the BBC would not allow them to play. So yeah, he was a big star, a radio star back in his day.
Did that kind of give you when did you get the sort of bug? I want to go into acting. Did you used to put on little skits for your family?
Oh, sure, yeah. When I was a youngster, I would write little plays and have my brother and sister act them out, and I would like them. And I never wanted to go into radio, but I was a big fan of, and still am, of classic Hollywood. When I moved to the city, I was fortunate enough to attend the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in Manhattan. And I would read biographies of all the famous actors from Cary Grant, Gary Cooper, James Dean, Marlon Brando, and I read about their life, and how they started and how they became actors and what they utilized. But yeah, I was never interested in radio, but I had a showbiz upbringing, much like my wife, Denise. Her father was a magician in Australia, and now my daughter's third generation show business.
Absolutely. So your first role was on a daytime soap, I believe, called Search for Tomorrow.
That's right.
From what I understand, it was a bit shaky at the beginning, but then you kind of got into it. Is that a big job, I suppose, wasn't it? So were there nerves, or just trying to find, who you were as an actor?
It was trying to find my way as an actor, and also being able to memorize vast amounts of dialogue overnight, essentially. When I started on the show, even though it wasn't live, the lead of the show, Mary Stewart, who had been on at that time 30 years, she wanted it to feel like it was live. So we had 3 cameras, and they'd go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then they'd wave a script under the camera, and you would go. Now, granted, we did have teleprompters, but I never could, by the time I found the teleprompter to find my line, it was horrible. So I learned, I was, soap operas in the 70s, well, before that, in the 70s, 60s, 80s, was a great job for young actors. There were like 14 of them in the city. They paid pretty well, and it allowed you to do theater at night. My first roommate, my dressing roommate, was Kevin Kline. Christopher Reeves was next door doing Love of Life. Kathleen Turner was overdoing The Doctors. Just about every New York actor did or appeared regularly on a soap opera. And they were terrific training, because if you could do a soap and make it believable, you could do anything.
No. So when you told your parents that you wanted to be an actor, because you decided at that point to forego going to university, were they quite supportive of you being in, or having been in that in the entertainment industry, or were they?
I think so. Yes, my father was very supportive. He realized, as I told our daughter, how difficult the business is. So he said, just be prepared that it's a very tough business. And actually, I got Search for Tomorrow before I graduated from the academy.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I actually had a job, and I left the school with 4 months to go before graduation, and I actually got my first job.
I read that in high school. One of your, as you were apparently a jock in high school, and one of your friends bet you $5 to audition, that you wouldn't audition for a play, and you did, and you got the part.
Oh my goodness, Tarloke, you've done your research. You're the best. Yes, that's exactly true. And it's funny, we have mentors in our life, and there are people who, and especially I find teachers to be so important. And I went up and saw Miss Russell Tutty, And she actually convinced me to play the role of Curly in Oklahoma, the musical. And I was smitten. I got bitten by the limelight, so to speak. And I knew right there I wanted to be an actor. I just loved it. I felt comfortable on stage.
So going on to a fan question, part of it's what I grabbed off the internet. So you basically auditioned to play what the article called Playboy Jeff Colby. What was the audition process like, and did you get to read with Pamela at all?
No, actually, I auditioned for Stephen.
Yeah.
And my agent called me, and this is like in the old days of Hollywood. I went to 20th Century Fox, and I had Stephen's scene all set to go. And they hired an actor to play Blake. And it was shot on, just like in the old days, on 35 millimeter Panavision camera. The set was lit, and I was like, oh my God, this is the big time.
Like, this is real.
And I did the audition. I did a good job. My agent called me and said, well, I have good news and bad news. I said, well, let me have the bad news first.
Okay.
You didn't get the role, Stephen. And I said, what's the good news? She said, you got the role of Jeff Colby. And I went, man, this is for the pilot, of course. I said, where's Jeff Colby? Where the heck is Jeff?
They wrote that for you, didn't they?
There was like 2 scenes. I said, well, okay. And they said, well, they're going to sign you to, I think, 9 of 13 shows. I said, that's fine. So I knew right there that I had to create a character because I wasn't going to let this go. This was my first series. And I think I ended up doing all but 2 shows of that first series.
Is it true that they created the character specifically for you, or is that not true?
Well, yeah, they did, because there really wasn't anything in the Bible about him. He was just Cecil's uncle. It wasn't until the Colbys came along, where Charlton Heston played my father, that I had a father.
Yeah. So,
I mean, I used to ask them, I said, who are my parents?
So I read that the original name of the families was supposed to be the Parkhurst and the Corbys. Is that true?
I don't know. I haven't heard that. But originally, when you know that George Papard played Blake, so we actually had to shoot the pilot twice, all his scenes, and they punched John Forsythe into it. But no, I mean, I think Cecil, the Colbys were always there. As far as Carringtons are concerned, I know that they're, I mean, I bring it out. I have the original script. I should have had it here for you to show you.
Oh, wow.
But I have the script called Oil, which was the original pilot.
So going on to George Papard, Nolan Miller described him as a pain in the ass. He said that those words came out of his own mouth. It's on video. And I'm just wondering what the difference would have been like with him as Blake through the entire 9-season run.
I don't think we would have made it, frankly. No. I mean, here, I think my little George Papard story, again, I was a nobody. I just had come out from New York, and this is my first thing in Hollywood, and I'm just like, God, and there's Linda Evans, and there's Dale Roberts, and then there's Bo Hopkins, and my gosh, there's the Blue Angel, George Papard. You know, I mean, wow. So one day I happened to sit down near him, and I introduced myself because we hadn't even spoken, let alone we just kind of worked together in scenes, and I introduced myself. And his reaction was this, Tarloke. He looked at me.
Oh.
Okay. And I never said a word. I just continued to eat my lunch. And many years later at the Golden Globes, when I was nominated, he actually walked up to me and apologized for that moment.
Oh,
said, yeah. I was like, what? And he said, it's good that we're both, he was on the 8 team. He said, isn't it great that it didn't work on Dynasty. And I know, things were kind of weird for me then, but we both got great shows now. I think I heard part of the reason he was drinking pretty heavily during the early Dynasty days. Then he cleaned up. But that was my George Papard story.
Wow. I mean, that's a kind of moment that would make you like crap in your pants, wouldn't it? Like, that's like staring at you smoking.
I mean, and I was like
as a newbie,
most of the low. I mean.
So on to the first, we're not going to do like season by season, but I just wanted to talk about the changes between season 1 and, going forward. So I really enjoyed the first season. Obviously it starts with, the wedding, and you had the Carringtons versus the Colbys. Obviously Cecil Fallon did a deal with Cecil Colby to marry Jeff to kind of bail out the trouble that Blake was in. Then obviously Blake ended up getting in more trouble, and there's a trial, and this mysterious figure with a big hat walks in. What did you know about what was about to happen? I know that Joan Collins wasn't thought of at that point. It was I can't remember the name of the actress.
Sophia Loren.
Yeah, Sophia Loren, and I understand they were holding out.
Gina Lola Brigida.
Yeah, and I understand they were also holding out for, is it Jessica Walter?
Yeah.
And yeah, Joan was signed on 2 weeks before the second season was due to start filming. But at the end of the first season, when you saw the script, were you aware of anything that was about to happen in terms of this?
Tarloke, maybe you would know better. I believe that we shot that one scene at the end of the first season with a photo double, because you never saw her face.
Yeah, it was. There's the name of an actress. I think it's Susie something.
So we didn't know who was coming.
Yeah.
My recollection when we finally found out and we were picked up for the second season, who would play Alexis, I didn't know who Joan Collins was. I mean, I'd heard of her, but I couldn't recognize her. And I remember I was driving my car down Sunset Boulevard over on the West End where it meets Beverly Hills, the residential area. And there's a bunch of posters, as I'm sure you know, and big billboards. And I'm driving along and I look up and I see The Bitch is Back. And there's a woman in black leather with a whip.
Oh, right. Okay.
And it said starring Joan Collins. I said,
starring Joan Collins. Okay.
Starring Joan. I said, this is going to be interesting. So that's when I first realized who Joan was, and that she would be playing Alexis.
Yeah. And I understand from my research that she was originally supposed to be called Madeline, but that's I read. I don't know if that's 100% true, but
I don't think so. I think it was always Alexis. At least it was in the script.
I mean, she whatever her name was, she definitely changed the dynamic of the show. I think she made a better sparring I think she made a better sparring partner than Cecil in many ways. But when talking about Joan, I'm not sure if it was you that said this when you were asked how would you describe Joan, and I think you answered, must I? She knew that part. She played it all her life. I think
I might have said that, yeah, but I don't think that actually is from me, or if it's an accurate quote, because I know Joan and I were, I think, and are very close. We became very close. I'll tell you about my first meeting with Joan. She had just started, and the show was starting to gel, and we were having lunch at 20th Century Fox out on the lawn. There's a little park there. And I was sitting at a bench, and I'd not met Joan at the time. And she walked up to me, sat down next to me. I said hello. And the first thing out of her mouth was, how much money do you make?
Oh.
And I looked at her and I said, well, how much money do you make? And she laughed and smiled. In other words, I'm not going to tell you, and you're not going to tell me. But we became extremely close. As a matter of fact, I think this, first of all, the set, we were blessed that we never, and I think John Forsythe set the tone that we never had any major blow-ups, and that's part of the reason I think we lasted as long as we did in that intensity, because Dynasty was different than any other show, I think, during that period.
She did say in an interview that she wasn't sure about the rest of the cast, but she got that feeling from pretty much day one about you, a good sort of feeling, you know. In terms
I was at Tarloke. I mean, I was living Hollywood large. I mean, although I wasn't hanging out with my peers like Tom Hanks, who I came out with and signed with ABC, I mean, that's what brought me out to California. I was under a contract with the network, and so was Tom, and he got bosom buddies. I wasn't hanging out with actors my age. I was hanging out with Joan Collins, Jackie Collins, Elton John, Roger Moore at her house. Those were my parties. Yeah. Go to Nolan Miller's, and I'd sit down with Barbara Stanwyck, Ginger Rogers, Esther Williams, and they're all drunk telling me how to get ahead in Hollywood. And it's so funny because, as I said when we started this interview, how I was a student of old Hollywood. And every now and then I watch, I happened to see a clip the other day. I had to do an interview last week with Good Morning Australia. And they ran a clip of me in the early days. I think it was season 1 when I was with Fallon. I come out, and the way I'm talking, and I have this very sort of clipped delivery. And I'm saying, and that was my take on that style of acting. But Joan and I were very close, and I think season 2, the cast really started to gel, and Joan just gave us that little bit of nitrous, that little nitro, to kick it a little bit higher up. Yeah. And from then on, it was like being shot out of a cannon, Tarloke.
It wasn't the first time a new bitch character was introduced. I remember it happening, I think it might have been the year before in Knots Landing, with Donna Mills being introduced as the bitch. And obviously Heather Locklear did that when she joined Melrose Place.
Right.
So,
Well, I mean, I think that whole format really started in me with Dynasty. I mean, Joan blew it out of the water.
Yeah, I mean, that was the big one. I remember I was watching I think it was Truth Behind the Rumors documentary, and Joan, she makes me laugh a lot, just because of the things that she says. They're very kind of, she has this sense of humor, I think, that I really appreciate. It's kind of mean and a bit shady, but it's funny at the same time. She said she had some kind of argument with Esther Shapiro, and Esther Shapiro slammed her fist on the desk and said, "I will always be Alexis." And then Joan remarked saying, "Well, she needed to lose a few pounds to play Alexis."
I remember.
And I was thinking, ouch, that is mean, but funny. It shouldn't be
funny.
Well,
here's the deal. She has I wouldn't say it's a reputation, but people think of Joan as being Alexis. And, my response to that is, no, I don't think. I mean, I think that for a woman, it's tough for a man, but to make a lifelong career as an actress, and continue to work and continue to pay your rent and your mortgage, that takes a skill. You got to be tough. And, Joan is very, very fair if you play fair with her. But you cross her, good luck.
I mean, what I'd say about Joan is she's a hustler. Not in the negative.
Is she 87 years old and she's still working, and she's still in the media, and she's still on Piers Morgan, and she's still doing interviews? Yeah, she's a hustler. I think she's great.
I think she's amazing. So I wanted to just discuss guest stars, because you had some pretty megawatt guest stars, walk-on parts, cameos. I mean, you had, is it Gerald and Betty Ford, Henry Kissinger, and then
Billy D. Williams from Star Wars, Helmut Berger,
Ali McGraw.
I got all those. Well, can I tell you that story with Gerald Ford and Kissinger and all that?
Yeah.
It has to do with me.
Okay.
It was all mine.
Oh,
I went to Esther Shapiro. Well, a guy by the name of Marvin Davis, who was a billionaire living in Denver, oilman. And every year he had Night of 100 Stars, which was this black tie gala of 1,500, maybe 2,000 people in the convention center in downtown Denver. I think we'd been once before. And I went in, we were invited, and the cast, of course, was invited because Marvin, we were the #1 show. And I mean, we were invited everywhere. I went, actually, I'll get back to this. The Fendi sisters invited me for a party on a weekend in Milan.
Okay.
I said, Aaron, can I go? It's all expenses. Sure. Just make sure you're back by Tuesday.
Okay.
I mean, anyway, so I walked into Esther Shapiro's office. Actually, I walked into Doug Kramer's office and I said, Doug, I got an idea. We're all going to be there. What's could be the harm if we bring a small second unit, camera department, an audio guy, go to the ball and just ask people if they would mind getting on camera for a cameo on Dynasty. You said, you're mad. I said, yes, I am. But you never know. It might work.
It's a genius idea.
Sure. Well, that's, the producer's side of me. And sure enough, I'm standing there watching Joan and Henry Kissinger. That I can't remember what she says. Portofino, was it, or something like that? And Kissinger says, yes, it was marvelous. Something ridiculous. It was all ad-libbed. But it was just an outstanding moment in the show. As a matter of fact, it was crazy, crazy night because Lionel Richie was performing and something happened on stage. But they actually, the fans were so crazy back then, that they arrested someone trying to get to see me. Yeah. And it turned out somebody I knew from high school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, at that point, Dynasty was just, I don't think you can imagine what it was like when you have an audience of 45 million people in this country and around the world. And it was different then, Tarloke, because there were only 3 networks here in the States. There was no cable, no internet.
Same in the UK. We had 3 channels, 4 channels.
And if not many people could afford VHS machines or video recording machines, so you rushed home to watch. Really, you would rush home to watch the show.
Yeah, yes.
And the show actually, and that's why I think today it still resonates. Why we're talking, why I was talking with Good Morning Australia, and have been doing other interviews about the 40th anniversary of its premiere. The show really became pop culture. I think Andy Warhol said, it's just marvelous.
This to me is one of these shows. I mean, Knots Landing, my other favorite soap, was about real lives, real people. This was, for me, was just pure fantasy. These people, the women were dressed in those gorgeous clothes. Like, I don't know anybody who walks around like that. I mean, maybe there are people like that out there, but yeah, it was pure fantasy for me, just about the rich. But then, the one thing you wonder about rich people, like, they've got money, they must be happy. But obviously, the show pretty much showed us that is not true, and tackled some major issues, I think, that maybe were ahead of its time, such as
way ahead, Tarkle.
Like homosexuality, and that obviously with the relationship that Stephen had, and saying a murder, rape, all those sort of things were pretty major. And obviously, what became a talking point at that time was the introduction of Rock Hudson as Daniel Reese. There was this, see, at the time, this mysterious disease that was killing gay men. And then you had Rock Hudson come on, and I've sort of read that a lot of people were talking about it, and Linda had a kissing scene with him. And then
you're right on the money, Tarloke, because at the time, well, let me just say this. When I walked into the dressing room, into makeup one morning, and Jack Freeman was our makeup artist, and he worked at Universal, and he was our lead makeup artist. And I sat down in the chair after a gentleman got up, and I said, "Who's that?" And he said, "That's Rock Hudson." I said, "Really?" Yeah. Jack just kind of looked down and didn't say anything. What happened with that is that no one knew what AIDS was prior to that, really, because when Rock, I don't think he even finished all his shows. I know that. I'm not sure about that. But he died shortly after his work on Dynasty. I think within a year, right? It wasn't long. I think so, yeah. And when he died, and he announced that he had AIDS before he died, we all said, "What the heck is AIDS?" And then it was worldwide news, what it was. Again, that's Dynasty, and the strength of Dynasty, and the strength of Rock Hudson, of course. But you're right. The fear on the set was, well, Linda kissed, we didn't know how it was spread. Linda kissed him on the lips. She kissed John on the lips. John kissed Val, and you just wonder how contagious, like this COVID thing.
Yeah.
You don't know how it's spread or what it is or how, and it was shocking.
Well, Joan talked about the fear that was on set. Like Linda was told, "Don't use that hairbrush," and then she was given loads of toothpaste and mouthwash to wash her mouth out. Obviously, people were very ignorant at that time because it was an unknown about how you could actually get it. So that must have been something that was felt around the whole set.
Oh gosh, yes. Yeah, I mean, one, obviously we felt terrible for him. It was horrible. What the heck is this? I mean, I knew he didn't look well when I saw him. He just didn't look at all like Rock Hudson. And but then when he announced what he had, and then you start reading or hearing all this stuff, it freaked us out. Like, it was just horrible.
Going back to Jeff, so Jeff and Fallon had sort of on and off, very much on and off, and I wrote a chronology of their relationship down. It just made me laugh because it's just So you married in season 1. You guys expecting a baby. Little Blake is born and then kidnapped. Season 3, you guys get divorced, and Jeff. I keep saying you, but it's Jeff. Jeff married Kirby. Season 4, Jeff and Kirby divorced, due to marry Fallon later in season, but she vanishes. That's one of my first memories, actually, of seeing this wedding dress on the floor. That was one of my earliest memories of the show when I was young. Apparently, Jeff marries Nikki Simpson, but we find out that's not true. Season 1 of the Colbys, Jeff and Fallon remarry. In season 8, they divorce again. But then what confused me was when I watched The Reunion, that they were still married and about to get divorced. So what happened there between the 8 and The Reunion?
Your guess is as good as mine, Tarloke.
Unless they got married again off screen,
Could have, but again, I think it bothered me. I mean, I mentioned that. I don't, just people, think whatever they want to think. And at that point, they had me divorce and marry and divorce and marry and divorce and marry. At that point, I just said, we'll let it go. We'll let it go. You're right.
But It seemed like in the reunion, we'll talk about the reunion later, so I've got a few questions about that.
Sure.
Seemed like you guys were reconciling again. Um, one of the things that I noted that you mentioned before was how crazy the fans were back in the day. And I think I read something that you were all, I don't know if it's in a store or somewhere, doing a public appearance at your own different stations, and the fans stormed the place and were knocking things over and what have you. And in the interviews that I saw, the old interviews, you seem like a quite not shy, you know, but maybe a little bit more reserved. What was that like? You know, experiencing that level of hysteria.
Well, it's not nice. I'll tell you my worst story, only because it gets kind of scary. I went to see a play on Broadway, and I was with a friend of mine, an actor friend of mine, and his wife, and I was with my girlfriend. Show is over, I'm coming out, and there's, you know, people, there's kind of like, you can't get out, and the ushers, and the lobby is full of people, and they're kind of pushing in photography and flashbulbs, I should say. And as I'm getting closer to the door, I said, who the heck is here? I'm looking around, and they're all, and my buddy says to me, he said, John, it's you. I said, what? And you couldn't move. You couldn't get out of the theater. So paparazzi, just 100 of them, and fans. And then people just started to say, well, who's here? You know, and then it just kind of builds. So an usher took me out the back door stage entrance. I think it was on 44th Street, down the alley, and I got to 44th Street. And of course, we didn't have a car because we just took a cab. It was no big deal. So we have no car. Mm-hmm. And I start heading towards 9th Avenue. And somebody says, there he is. And suddenly, 100 paparazzi come around, and they corner me at 44th and 9th Avenue. And they form a circle, and bulbs are going off. Well, that starts attracting more people. Next thing you know, there's 300 or 400 people surrounding me. My buddy gets out. I don't know how he did it, hails a cab. I jump in the cab. We go up to a place called Joe Allen's, which is an old entertainment restaurant pub up on a couple blocks up the road. And of course, they followed us up there. And the owner was so nice, he actually locked the door, and until they went away, wouldn't let them in. But that's the bad side of it. And I am, yes, you're right, I'm very private. On the other hand, I'm also very accommodating. I mean, I'm not going to say who it was, but I was at a Dodgers game in Los Angeles, baseball game, and a very big star. We were in the men's room, and a young boy and his dad came up and asked him to sign an autograph, and nah, you know, 8-year-old kid. I'm very accommodating, and I take the time because I figure if somebody wants my autograph, I think that I attribute that to the good work I've done, I think. And I know I'd be very nervous to ask somebody for an autograph. So I always am accommodating. The bad thing is, if you're in a restaurant and somebody sees you do it, that's one, that's two, and then you kind of ruins your meal. But I do it. I take the time to do it.
I'm not that kind of person to do stuff like that. I remember seeing somebody from a reality show as like one of those fashion ones when I was in New York a few years ago, actually New Jersey, saw her at a bus stop, of all things, and she tweeted something against the transport authority because the bus was late, and I thought, she's having a bad day, I won't go up to her, because I wanted to respect her space and stuff, but I guess not everybody's like that. I guess something takes over when you see somebody that you hold up to a certain ideal. Marie Osmond actually described an encounter, obviously, you know, the kind of hysteria that you guys, the kind of hysteria thing that experience that boy bands get these days. But she described how at her brother's hotel room. They were on tour at some point, and there was a knock on the door, and there was a big box outside. They opened the box, and there was a fan inside with an oxygen mask and stuff on. Like, and that's pretty, you know, crazy. I mean, did you have anything like that? Like,
yeah, I mean, every time when I would go on tour doing a play, I mean, just, I guess because I was the hot one on the show, I mean, I'd have knocks on my door at 3 o'clock in the morning with drunken women everywhere. I mean, go away, please. Yeah, no, that happened quite a bit. I'd never had anything that unique or certainly creative, but yeah, when the show was #1 almost around the world, I think. I mean, you know, I mean, I was in Lagos, Nigeria. I was in Kenya. I was in all over Europe. I mean, I remember I had a little single out that I did with Heidi Brühl, who was like the Shirley Temple of Germany when she was growing up. She was a big star. And I did a single called Painted Dreams, which I think got as high as like 20 on the German Billboard. But yeah, I toured around. Actually, John James Sings. If you YouTube it, you'll see me on their version of their big chat show at night, singing live. But anyway, so I had the day off, and I figured I'd like to go get some antiques. Let's go to Luxembourg or something like that.
yeah.
And which we did. And word got out, of course. And I don't know if you've been to Luxembourg, but the streets are these like little fairy tale, like almost like, I don't know, something you'd see in Harry Potter, these, you know, little crooked streets with cobblestone. And it was like I was the Pied Piper. I mean, they were nice. They kept their distance, but they would follow me around like these little pack of people. One other quick story. I was with Henry Winkler. We were filming a commercial for the fall season in Times Square. Henry Winkler, Shelley, what's her name? From Laverne and Shirley.
Penny Marshall?
Penny Marshall, Gavin MacLeod from Love Boat, all the stars for ABC, me. And they shut down Times Square, and they had the ABC sign, and they got a shot of us walking up Times Square. So we wrapped. And Henry said, come on, let's go get a burger down at Joe Allen's, of course. And we started walking down the street, and it was just Henry and I and about 400 people walking behind us. And Henry said, just hang on a second. I said, what? He said, let me just get rid of these people. So he stopped, turned around, walked up, said hello to everybody, answered a few questions. Thank you very much for coming. Have a great night. Turned around, they dissipated, we went off. So there's a way to deal with people.
Be polite.
In a humane and nice, gentlemanly way.
Absolutely. So going back to the show, how was it dealing with Aaron Spelling? So I understand that he was on set quite regularly, and he was said to have a tight fist on the script. So does that mean you weren't able to suggest any sort of changes, or maybe we should do it this way, or was that unheard of on set?
Well, here's the deal. When we started out, we would say almost what was written. We would never, but as the show became more popular and we got a more powerful position, I'd walk in and say, no, this doesn't, no. And 9 times out of 10, I was right. I said it was just too much. But Aaron knew his stuff. I used to call it Aaron's Broadcast Company, ABC, because he had like 6 or 7 shows on the air. And I like him working with Aaron as working with some of the, again, back to my romantic Hollywood days of Cecil B. DeMille, all the great producers, Selznick. In the golden days of Hollywood, Aaron was of that stature in television. because television, I believe, in the 80s reached its pinnacle as far as evolving as a medium, because in the 50s, it was pretty loose and fast. I mean, cameras were new and production values were not that great. And most of it was shot on film anyway. And then they just cut these series. And the 60s, I think they got into drugs because you had shows like The Flying Car or the Flying Nun, My Mother the Car. all these very all these very strange shows, although you had some good dramas. But the 80s, I think they really hit their stride. And there were only 3 networks and tremendous power. And Aaron was one of those producers who was the biggest in town.
Yeah.
Aaron was, if you worked for Aaron Spelling and his show, you had a chance of the show working, you were going to be a star. He made a lot of stars.
Catherine Oxenberg said that he played Mr. Nice Guy, but if you crossed him, he would set the pit bulls on you. So I'm guessing that's just her experience, you know, of.
Well, here's my Aaron Spelling story. You know, Pamela Sue Martin left early, of course, and I begged her not to. We had negotiated a series spinoff called the Colbys, and so that was shelved. And about 2 years later, I was called into Doug's office, and Doug said, "We're thinking about doing the Colbys."
Okay.
And I said, "Really?" He said, "Yes. Are you interested?" I said, "Well, yeah." I said, "You know, I mean, Dynasty's the #1 show in the country now. I'm not sure if I'd like to do that or not, take a risk of leaving a #1 show." He said, "No, you'll do, you know, it's going to be kind of like this." So I got back to my house. My agent called me and I said, "Okay, what's the deal here?" He said, "Well, it will be the Colbys." I said, "Okay, what about the money? Are they going to bump me up a little bit for the risk I'm taking?" He said, "No."
Oh.
"And I've got some bad news." I said, "What's the bad news?" He said, "They're going to move your salary backwards 2 years ago." I said, "Well," he said, "Well, you see, that's what you would have been making 2 years ago if they went ahead with it." I said, "Well, no, that doesn't sound right." He said, "So I'm taking a risk. I'm taking a cut in pay." He said, "Yes, but you're going to get star billing." So I said, "Okay, well, let me see." So I get star billing. I work for less and I'm taking a risk. And I said, "Well, what do you think?" He said, "Well, it's always nice to say, you know, starring John James." I said, "Yeah, I guess that's working." You know, he said, "Then the chances are you'll probably end up coming back to Dynasty." So about 2 weeks later, I get a call from my agent. He's all nervous. I said, "Fred, what's the matter?" He said, they just signed Charlton Heston. He's going to play your father." And I said, "Well, what's the problem?" He said, "They gave him star billing too." I said, "Yeah, but I have star billing. Remember, Fred?" I said, "This is how it's going to look. The Colbys starring full size John James. And then I want half size bottom right with Charlton Heston." He said, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "No. They told me to live by my contract that was negotiated 2 years ago. I'm living by my contract. I'm taking a pay cut and I got star billing. Thank you very much." He said, "You're kidding." I said, "No." So, of course, Aaron calls Freddie Westheimer, my agent at the time, William Morris. And Freddie told me, I walked in Aaron's office at the time. It was like an aircraft hangar. You had the door, and then you had all the way down at the end of the office was his desk. And Fred walked in, and Aaron didn't say anything. And Freddie approached him at the desk, and all Aaron said was, "Okay, how hard are you going to squeeze?" And Fred said, "All John wants is what he'd be making on Dynasty this year. Not a penny more, not a penny less." And that was it. And Aaron agreed to that, and we did the Colbys. And frankly, I think that's why, I mean, Aaron and I, we had a relationship. And I would spend weekends with him at Marvin Davis's home and watch football, and we became closer because of that, because I didn't screw him, so to speak.
So going back to the show, both shows actually, both shows were known for outrageous storylines and cliffhangers. We'll get onto those. There was, I think, Alexa's car plunging into a river, Alexa shooting a gun so a pregnant Crystal will get thrown off a horse and lose her baby, Fallon almost sleeping with her own brother, Adam, when she didn't know that was her brother. Alexa's dressed as a nun, Sammy Joe recruiting a lookalike actress to play Crystal, because she was mad at Crystal for being the executor of this fortune that she felt was hers. Crystal fighting Crystal, who was actually Rita, the actress with that southern accent. Crystal randomly throwing dinner plates when she was suffering with the brain tumor. And obviously the question of who Jeff's father is. Then we get on to the jealousy that Adam felt, I think, of Jeff. So he put poison paint in his office. So that was pretty nuts. And then you get on to, we'll talk about the Colby series first, then we'll go back to the Moldavian Massacre, because I'm guessing every time you do an interview, you get asked about the Moldavian Massacre. But you got paired with Emma Sams. And that was the first Fallon that I knew because of when I kind of, started to take notice of the series. I mean, when you're 3 years old, sitting there on the sofa, hugging your mum, you don't necessarily notice, take things in like Dynasty. But yeah, that she was the first Fallon that I knew. Obviously, Randall Adams, and I love her. I think she's fabulous, and I love Pamela Sue Martin too, because I remember watching. I think it was an Earthquake. And I thought she was an excellent.
No, she was in Poseidon.
Oh,
Poseidon Adventure.
What's that?
She might have been an Earthquake, but she was in Poseidon Adventure, the one about the ship sinking with Boris, with Shelley Winters.
Slip of the tongue there. So I thought they're both fabulous actresses, and they brought a different kind of view to Fallon. But what was your experience of acting with Emma Sams? Was it easier to play off of one actress than the other, or what was the experience of the change?
They were both entirely different. Fallon, the Pamela Sue Martin, was like a wild mare. She was, and a spitball. I mean, she just a spitfire, I should say. She was entirely different from Emma. Emma had a nice quality, soft, but also strong. She was just a different approach to Fallon. She still kept some of the, the components of the character, but they were both. I enjoyed working with them both. It was 2 years between them, and when Emma came on, it was delightful to be working with Fallon again, because it'd been a couple of years where I was kind of drifting around with different actresses and characters. So I missed that storyline because I think it was an important aspect to the show. Mm-hmm. And Emma brought her own take to the character, and it worked. It was fun.
Aside, I know you mentioned the billing. Aside from that, what was it like working? I mean, these are some megawatt, actors. Barbara Stanwyck, Charlton Heston,
Catherine Ross.
Yeah, Catherine Ross. Yeah, I mean, obviously Charlton, a legend.
Ricardo Montalban.
Yeah, I mean, many, big stars. So, what was your experience of working with them?
Oh, it was incredible. I mean, I remember I was asked to go to Paramount. That's where we shot, Paramount Studios, the Colbys, for a rehearsal with Charlton Heston for our first scene together before we started working. And I remember, like it was yesterday, I stood at the door and he was on the set and he wanted to meet me, and he stood there, and I thought, my gosh, I'm like with Ben-Hur.
Yeah.
I mean, this is this is Ben-Hur. I mean, this guy's huge. And he worked, funny enough, made those movies at Paramount. But he was charming, very much a professional. We ran the scene a few times. And then my best memory of Barbara Stanwyck was one of the first scenes we had, and she played my grandmother, of course, working with her. And again, getting back to my desire for the golden era of Hollywood and emulating that and learning from those. Here I am working with Barbara Stanwyck. And and I'm doing the scene with her, and I'm saying my lines, but I'm actually doing a little narrative. Oh my God, I see what she's doing here. This is very interesting. Oh, I can see how she's working the camera, and she's actually forcing the edit right now because she's turning away from the camera. And then they're going to have to come back to her. I mean, I'm actually doing this running dialogue of all of her camera technique and what she's doing and saying the lines. I mean, at that point, I could care less about the scene because I was so impressed that I was working with Barbara Stanwyck. I mean, she was the Meryl Streep of her day, and she was one of the Academy Award winner, blah blah blah, and some of the greatest movies ever made. Yeah, it was thrilling. It was just a great. Colbys was actually. I enjoyed that show a lot. They poured money into that show. Just Doug Kramer. I mean, a small town in Ohio could live for 100 years off our flower budget. I mean, it was just every week. I mean, just if you look at it, he insisted that everything just have fresh flowers, and the color and the set. Oh my gosh.
I mean,
it was amazing. It had an amazing look to it. And we filmed at Baron Hilton's estate in Beverly Hills that just went on the market, I think, for $75 million.
I mean, both series look like, oh, this is like a palace. It just looked amazing.
Well, I think that's part of the style that Aaron wanted to set, and that's what I was saying, the old Hollywood, he wanted that full, if you get a good copy of, like on a DVD, you can see the colors and how rich everything was. It was the way it was shot. And that was like early Technicolor.
Well, the Colbys complete series is my next purchase.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's a good show.
You can get that on DVD. I'm not sure if it's in high definition. I'm not sure if you'd want to see yourself in high definition, so you can see.
Oh gosh.
But yeah, you were young then, so you know.
I was very young.
So going on to cliffhangers, the alien abduction. I'm not quite sure how to describe how I feel about that. It was just very unexpected. I'll say that.
Well, here's my theory on that. If you watch the middle to the end of that season, Fallon was having some emotional problems. And if we had gone another season, I think she had a nervous breakdown is what really happened. And I think she would have been found somewhere driving through the night in a motel by herself, believing she was, but she never was. I think she had a nervous breakdown. Although I must say, I remember sitting on the set with the director saying, oh my, and Don Medford was his name, and he was our #1 director, did most of them. He said, gee, I wish I'd read this before I said I'd do it. Going through the script, how to make this thing work and make it sell. It's funny how they shot that, if you watch it, I shouldn't be saying this, but it was actually the back of a lorry is what they calls.
Okay.
And they backlit it.
Oh, well, I didn't know that.
Yeah. But, so I shouldn't tell that. That's like a magician giving away the trick. But
it's out there now. So going back to cliffhangers again, we have season 5 when it was the Michael Praed was in the I'm not sure if I've said that right, was in the series as the prince. It was kind of the build up to the big wedding. And I love Catherine Oxenberg. She's like one of my favorite actresses. But then it was the big Moldavian massacre, and you're obviously there with your date, who was in the middle of it. She was taking pictures. And I remember when I was watching it the other day, I was shouting at the screen. I was like, "What are you doing? Like, hide! Stop taking stupid pictures. Just lie on the floor. Lie on the floor. Gosh, like." And it was crazy. It was such a. I remember when I was little seeing that in the papers for months, like, who's dead, who's alive, who's dead, who's alive. And then, because I hadn't seen the Moldavian Massacre since I was little, but I saw it just a few days ago, and I remember seeing the aftermath, the next episode. Obviously, carried on past that, and I saw it, and I thought, oh, okay, like nobody important, died or got injured. I know there was a Stephen's date, and see that was Ali McGraw kind of exited at that point. So, but I thought, oh, I'm guessing that's the reaction that a lot of fans had. Is that it?
I think yes. I think that's the amount of the way it looked at the end of it, that you would think no one would walk out of there. My Moldavian Massacre story is that after the big stunt, they brought us all in and they sprayed smoke around, and then they placed us on the ground. And I happened to be lying on top of Ali. And the producer said, "All right, I want everyone to close their eyes and do not open them again until I say so." That was everyone. John Forsythe, me, Linda. I thought, oh dear, what's this all about? And she walked around with Jack Freeman, our makeup artist, and started putting blood on people. And suddenly the feet stopped in front of us. And of course, I'm not going to keep my eyes open. So I open my eyes and I see these, two pair of feet standing there. And a hand came down and put a big red dot on Ali's forehead. At which point she starts giggling and laughing. And she said to me, "Do you think it's serious?"
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the director got in a lot of trouble about that. And Jerome Cortland, who was one of our major directors, because it ran way over budget. We just said, when is this going to end? Because I mean, we were a pretty fine-tuned machine at that point. Was it our 6th year? I don't know.
Do you think that was the moment where, because the ratings started to drop after that, do you think that was the people on the internet?
I think they went. I think
yeah, into Happy Days.
I think like you said, people were expecting to see somebody of significance not get up, but we all got up. Now I don't know if that was, again, a decision made by the producers that if anybody gives us trouble, you're not getting up, because contracts maybe in the 5th year were coming up.
Don't be negotiating for a salary bump. That's the wrong moment.
It's the wrong moment. And that's a tool. And they'll just say, okay, you're not getting up. And I don't know. And I think that hurt the show.
Yeah. I remember one of these seasons that I think you were on the Colbys at the time, and there was this huge, ridiculously big mega cast on Dynasty. It was ridiculously large. So I was like, how can you focus on any individual character with a cast of, like, there must have been about 10 or 15 people in the main cast in the credits.
On Dynasty.
Yeah, on Dynasty, yeah. I think I'm not sure if the focus, because Joan said that she felt that it kind of diluted things. Maybe the focus was a split at that point between.
Well, John was wholly against the Colbys. He didn't like it because he knew that it would affect their budget on Dynasty when we left. And a lot of the focus would be going to the Colbys to try and get it to go. I thought it was a good show. Unfortunately, ABC placed us against the #1 and the #2 show on NBC, which was Cheers, and the Cosby Show, Bill Cosby Show, which was, I mean, just solid ratings. And there was no way we could take over, although we did win a couple of markets. They never moved us. And it was expensive. But John, as I said, and I think Joan probably was not thrilled about it too, because we did have a great cast. I mean, it was just Max Caulfield was brilliant. This kind of rich, snotty guy, Southern Kenny. We became super close friends.
Yeah. So got a couple of fan questions. What was a typical day like on set? Did you have to spend the whole day there, even if you weren't doing many scenes?
During the winter, I remember leaving at 5:30, and I remember leaving and it was dark in a soundstage all day. You'd go out, and it was like you were a miner.
Wow.
Coming out of a mine. You go, oh, sunlight or a vampire.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, long days, very long days. We were scheduled for 12-hour days, and we shot 12 hours. Sometimes we went over, and on Fridays, we could work from first shot normally in the morning was 7 a.m. That's when cameras started rolling. So ladies had to be in makeup by 5:30 and in wardrobe by 6:45, and then the cameras roll at 7 o'clock. Yeah. That was their day.
Pretty long then. With the end of the series, the decision was made to cancel the series. There are rumours that there was going to be a 10th season and Dominique Devereaux was going to make a comeback. What do you know about the planned 10th season?
Well, there were all kinds of rumors, but I felt that the writing was on the wall because we had a new producer, Paulson was his name, who was one of the producers on Dallas. And they actually wanted me to have an affair with Monica, my half sister, and I refused. I said, come on, Jeff Colby, that's one thing I have been, is somewhat of an honorable guy. And now to have incest, I don't think I'm going to do it. If you don't like it, you can fire me. So my feeling was, I think that they were going in the wrong direction. They should have actually reinvented itself and gone back to the beginning, where it focused, rather than the shock value, which they seemed to, every week it had to be either a wrestling match between the ladies or a fight scene or this or that, more substance in the writing. And I didn't see that coming. So I felt that the writing was on the wall.
Yeah. So I remember a scene when I think Monica and Jeff were in a restaurant, and there was a photographer spying on them, and Monica gets kind of close, and he takes a picture, and it kind of looks like they're on a romantic date.
Well, that's where they were going, Tarloke.
Yeah.
I
know they covered many kind of what at the time were controversial topics, but I think that's probably a step too far.
A little bit too far, at least for my character. I mean, I said that because I felt that if the show goes out, I don't want to be remembered as being.
I love Tracy Scoggins. I remember her in the first season of Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman. I thought she was brilliant as Kat in that. I thought she was
she's great lady.
Very funny. So going on to the reunion. Now, I was looking forward to this. I remember it being in 2 parts on BBC One. It was still on the big channel. And I enjoyed it. And when you guys appeared on Oprah, you guys seemed to approve of it. But there were a few things to me that didn't make sense. One of them was Fallon and Jeff getting divorced again when I thought they'd already been divorced. The thing about the Nazi art just being given away. I don't think it was the same mansion interior either.
No.
And yeah, so a few things didn't make sense to me. Plus some of the characters, as I know that Gordon Thompson obviously played Adam, but then you had Robin Sachs, so I think is a brilliant actor. He just wasn't Adam for me. He didn't play it the same. See what we were.
Well, unfortunately, I think Adam was working on Santa Barbara, right? He was on a soap opera.
The producers of Dynasty weren't, according to him, weren't willing to schedule it around his filming on Santa Barbara. So they had to move on, I guess. And I didn't know at that time. I didn't know Al Corley as Stephen, because mine was Jack Coleman. So that I was just like, "Where's Jack Coleman? Where's?"
And it was odd that Al would come back, because Al essentially really didn't want to be on the show after the second year. He just wanted to move on, which was kind of crazy, but
played it very well. Played it very well, though.
Yeah, he was the original Stephen.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
I think frankly, I never liked the story of the reunion. I just thought it was, the thing with, like you said, the Nazi art and moving locations and things like that. The interior of the house. I don't even know if they saved the set when we finished. So they had to find something in Los Angeles that was similar. But yeah, I kind of was hoping for a different script, because I think what it was a farewell to our fans, which it really wasn't. They made it something different, which is with the action and all that. But there could have been some nice scenes between some of the characters, referring to scenes or seasons that had gone by, and either patching up old rivalries or old, but that didn't happen.
I think there was that initial, for a lot of fans, that initial curiosity to see what these folks had been up to the last couple of years. And I remember just in the last few days reading that about the ratings, because I know the ratings in America always confuse me, because in this country it's just by millions. But you have the Nielsen ratings and what have you. And I think the Nielsen ratings weren't great. They were better than the last couple of seasons, but still not great. But the viewership was, I think, 23 million and 20 million, which by today's standards, that's spectacular, because no network show gets 10 million now. But it was obviously quite, I guess, for the time, maybe.
Well, Tarloke, I think they canceled this when we had almost 28 million people, or 27 million people. And I think about that.
But yeah, I mean, it's hard to see, because I also read that there were hopes that the show would get brought back for another season. But I think after that was made, I enjoyed it. I think because it was just nice to see people back, and the usual cat fights, and the cat fight between Alexis and Crystal, which were legendary.
Well, I think we owed it to the fans to at least make it the way the show ended with Joan and I think Stephanie, right, hanging on a balcony.
Yeah, Adam had pushed. There was like a scuffle.
That's the end of the show after 9 years. I mean, it's terrible. I thought that was crazy.
Yeah, I enjoyed the reunion. Some parts of it. I mean, Sammy Jo being broke again. I was thinking, oh gosh, again, is that happening again? Like, she's broken, hustling to doing whatever she can to get money. Is that happening again? Are Jeff and Fallon really doing the on and off thing? I enjoyed some of the action sequences, but I found it very odd when Jeff, was captured and he was at a dining table, Jero and Krabbe on the other side, obviously the big, head of the consortium. That whole consortium thing, that just wrecks my head. It's just, this is just stupid. So sorry to say, if that's a bit.
I thought the same means nothing to the people who've been watching the show.
And I was like, how could he not see through those candles? How can he not see who that is? I'm just like, he's not blind. He can see. Like, you can see that is that guy. Just things like that. Just I thought were a bit, maybe not thought out, or
I don't know what the motivation was for doing it in this. I mean, the network had to agree to the script, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know what they were going after, but as I said earlier, I was not happy with the script, but I certainly felt that I had to do it, which I did.
But when you guys, it was great to have Kathleen Bella back as well. I think she's great. She punched that, I forget her name. I know it's Alfonsia Emanuel, the lady that played her. But the lady that, you know, the African American, or she's not American, but she's British.
Right. I can't think
She
of
was
it.
one of the secretary or something like
Right.
that. So I enjoyed. She got, you know, got a punch in there. So I thought that was quite good. But yeah, I quite enjoyed it. I mean, it's now finally on DVD after all these years. It was first released in Australia. That's where it was first released. I think you can buy it for about £25 or something like that. But yeah, it's now on DVD for the first time ever. So I'm gonna complete my set. You know, it's part of it. You know, so I got to get it. But I remember seeing the Oprah show. It used, at the time, it was on Channel 4. In the UK, and I remember I was so excited to watch it. I was so pumped. I mean, I was only 13 years old at the time, and I was already a Dynasty super fan. And to see you guys back, and you know, see Joan was on, you know, by video link, and it was funny when Al was dropping jokes left, right, and center. I thought it was so funny, and you were like your reserved self that I remember, you know, seeing an interview sort of early on in your career going red, blushing. You know, I guess you were still quite young at that time. I mean, I guess you were married and you had a very young baby as well, Laura.
Yes. Laura was on the set. We have a lovely picture of Linda holding Laura, who was just a year. No, she wasn't even that. She was 8 months, maybe. 8 months, years.
It didn't seem like
I had more of a. I really enjoyed, because I'd moved to New York and I hadn't been back to Los Angeles since we sold our home. And Laura was born in New York, but it was great because I was staying at the Mondrian Hotel on Sunset Boulevard for that, and Joan would come up and play with Laura and visit us. It was a fun time. I enjoyed it. It was like a reunion in many ways for me with the cast since I moved away.
So the rumors about, you know, Linda and Joan hating each other, you know, John hating Joan, and you know, tension in between the cast. Was there any truth to that, or was it just part of, you know, maybe just getting in amidst of a long working day and saying a snappy comment because you're tired? I mean, was there any truth to that?
There might have been a little, Tarloke. I mean, I could say there were sort of two camps. I was always at Joan's house, and I never visited John's. And not that it mattered, but there wasn't really any great tension on the set. I mean, Joan certainly got the hair up on John's neck because Joan's a strong woman, and Joan, you know, was the star of the show, really. I mean, her and John and Linda. But there was, I mean, I think there was, I wouldn't call it friction. It was just that professionally, everybody was terrific on set. But as far as socializing, there were two camps, and that was Joan's side, and that was John and Linda's side. And I love Joan, so I don't know if I was because of my association with Joan and always going and being with Joan, that I was sort of like on the outs with the other group. So who knows?
So back onto some fan questions. What was the hardest scene you had to play, and what was the funniest scene that you had to play? Do you remember?
I would say the most difficult scene I had for me would probably be some of my early scenes with Pamela Sue. Again, like I said, she's a Spitfire. She was very tough. And I had to be really on my toes. And that one of the more difficult scenes was when she announced that she was having an abortion. And I came out with a towel and all that. because I wanted it to be, it was a good scene and I wanted it to be right. That would have been my hardest scene because it was a good scene and I didn't want to blow it and I put a lot of work into it. I'd say that I was a bit of a prankster.
Yeah.
I had a lot of funny scenes. I can't be specific, but a lot of times with John Forsythe, because he's so deadly serious and I'm deadly serious, that we'd start giggling. And then once we start giggling, it would all fall apart
Yeah.
because we couldn't get through the scene. And I had a lot of those, a lot. That's one thing I must say. Aaron did allow us to keep a light set because we really did work hard. I mean, it was a hard show to film. It wasn't just cheap sets. I mean, everything had to be right, and the set designer, in the hair and makeup. So he did allow us to do a lot of gags. We had some wonderful gag reels for the first 5 years for our rap party. And the directors would allow it or set up gags. So we were always laughing. That's one thing. It was a very light set. It was never very heavy, ever, which was great.
Yeah, there are quite a few. I don't know if you've seen them, but there are quite a few gag reels online. There was one on Daily Motion. I'm not sure how legal that is, but it's of season 8, and I think there's I keep saying Blake, but obviously God rest his soul, he was John.
Forsythe.
Had something in his mouth, and he was spitting something out of his mouth, when talking at the same time. So yeah, I mean, I just remember hearing stories about Dallas where Joan Van Ark would describe Larry Hagman as squirting peanut butter through his teeth. So it's good to know, you got, for all the seriousness, you got, doing a show, you guys had fun too. So, but yeah, I enjoy watching some of the gag reels. After the show ended, I know you acted in a few things, but not loads. Was that a conscious choice, a desire to be with your family more? So you had you two. Well, you had, by the reunion, you had Laura, but I guess
Laura, and then 2 years later we had Philip.
Yeah. So was it a desire to be with your family more? And
very much. I decided, my wife and I, we bought a farm, and I knew how quickly kids grow up. I just felt that, and I wanted to enjoy every day, and I wanted to work on my terms. I did work. I mean, not as much. If I'd stayed in Los Angeles, certainly I would have done some more work. But my emphasis was spending that quality time with the kids while they were growing up, and having horses and chickens and
I love that.
All that kind of stuff, and letting them grow up and have a real well-rounded upbringing. But when I did work, my agent said, "Would you do this in LA?" And I'd say, "No, I can't. I mean, I can't separate my family." So I would either do movies of the week or, some feature films that were funny enough filming close by. Although I did, do some plays, a number of them. But I was always managed to get the kids and my wife there. I did a national tour with Roddy McDowell, Dial M for Murder with Nancy Allen. And I was on the road for 9 months with that. However, I was able to bring the kids to Philadelphia, Denver, Chicago, because I'd spent 2 weeks, 3 weeks in cities, and I could bring them out and they could visit with me. But yeah, it was a conscious thing. I mean, I had also at the end of the Dynasty, I know series today run like Grey's Anatomy, whatever, 15, 16 years. We only ran 9, but still we did 235 hours. I did 235 hours of primetime television. That's a lot of series. And I was pretty tired. I was tired. I needed, to get off that treadmill a little bit. But I must say, I do remember the last day of Dynasty, my last working day. And I went into my dressing room and I was getting changed back into my civilian clothes. And I remember Hank, because I was always very meticulous with my wardrobe. I'd always hang it perfectly on its hanger, the suit. And I took my suit and I put it up on the rack and I said, "Goodbye, Jeff Colby." And I'll just never, and I made I just said, "Goodbye," and click, and out I went.
Did you take anything from the set when the show ended? Like, did you?
No, I wish I did though.
Oh,
I mean,
well, gold,
couple of suits maybe, but I wish I did. But no, I have most of the memorabilia. You know, there's a little. I don't know if you can see that.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, Aaron was very good about that. He always gave us these little presents and gifts.
One funny thing I heard, Linda had said that they wanted everything to look real. So so when you see the characters drinking champagne, it was actually real champagne, and she was like, "Well, we drank it."
Yeah.
So were you a little what we call it, what we say in England, were you a little bit sauced when you were reading your lines?
Oh no. No. Maybe a couple of those party scenes, but no.
Have you seen any of the reboot?
I saw the pilot.
And what did you think?
You know, Tarloke, I really can't say enough because I haven't really seen the show.
Right.
I mean, I read that it's all, they're essentially just using the names.
Yeah, I mean, when I first saw the show, I thought, I can't do it. I can't do it. It's not. It's. I mean, I just thought it was a bit more. It's a bit more trashy soap than because there was a sophistication about the original Dynasty.
Right.
But I will say one thing about it. They have got the Fallon character dead on. Liz Gillies, I think, is quite comparable to Pamela Sue Martin's version of Fallon, and I think she plays it incredibly well. But you know, the Jeff character's fine. You know, Monica's in it right from the start, and it's just I started watching it again, but without the original Dynasty in mind. And it's not a bad show, but it's not well rated, and but it's very popular on Netflix. Very popular on Netflix.
I just saw it on Netflix, so I probably will have to pick it up and check it out on Netflix.
Because there's a difference now. Now we have, when I was growing up, we had 4 channels, but now there's cable, all these different satellite channels. Okay. So the way that we consume things, like people, you know, watch things on their phones and their tablets and their laptops. But and it's sad in a way, because I remember back in the 80s when it was, you know, the Dallas night or the Dynasty night, whole families would gather together and watch the show together. You know,
I spoke with some fans, and when they were in college, and they had Dynasty night, and they had drinking games, and you were each a character. And one person would be Jeff, one person would be Fallon, and every time Jeff says Fallon, you have to take a shot.
Oh, that sounds like fun. That sounds
or
like
whatever words that we were using a lot. And I heard that bars were, you know, gay bars in Hollywood were filled with people on Dynasty night. Yeah, it was an event. It was something special.
If because I understand with the reboot, I think Richard and Esther are sort of helping out with that. If you were ever asked to come back as a different character, would you do it?
Well, it depends on the character. I mean, I think I'd have to come back as a Colby, right? I don't know, unless they want to really go campy and have me come in as. I've thought of it. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I would do it as a tribute, I think.
You see, in Axcellerator, you make quite a good villain.
Thank you.
That could be quite fun. So see, you got 2 children. One, is it in the Navy?
No, he's in the Air Force.
The Air Force, which is it's such an amazing thing to do. Thank him for that. And obviously Laura, I remember watching her on America's Next Top Model, and I didn't really know who she was at first. It was just Laura James wanting to be a model. And then it kind of dawned on me, the name. I remember Googling her, and then your name came up too. And I was like, oh, okay, I did not know that. And she did. I remember that being the social media kind of year when they got extra points and what have you. And I remember seeing,
Right.
I was rooting for her right from the start. I was definitely a fan. And then when you and your wife Denise came in at the end when she won, that was such a touching moment. When you
Well,
when
no,
you, go
go
on.
ahead.
No, it's
No,
okay.
no,
No.
you're right, because let me just give you the backstory here. Laura, in high school, I asked her, what do you want to do? And she said, I want to be in show business. I said, what else do you want to do? So she said, oh, I don't know, hotel, restaurant management. I like resorts. And I said, she went to a 4-year college, graduate, and was about to graduate. She called me and said, Dad, could you drive me to New York City? I have an audition. I said, what? An audition for what? She said, America's Next Top Model. Now, she'd been watching that show for, I don't know, since she was 11 years old. And now she's what, well, maybe not 11, but certainly she was 21 or 20 when she went in and auditioned. So maybe 8 years she'd been watching this show. And so I drove her in. Long story long, she ends up making the cut. So she had to come home, graduate from college, and then go out and start the show. Well, Tarloke, let me tell you this. My son being in boot camp, I spoke with him more than I did Laura.
Oh.
It's once a week. They tell you you will be taped. She can't tell you where she is or how she, or what's going on. And I said, hi, Laura, how you doing? I'm doing okay, Dad. I said, are you having fun? Yeah. So it got down to the end, and there were 3 girls left. And they had let all the parents know that it got down to the end, and the final 3, their parents we'd like to have you there in Jamaica. Or actually, they didn't even tell us where we were going. We'd like to have you with your daughter for the final selection. I said, okay, fine. So we watched the show, and then we knew that it was coming up, and we didn't hear anything. I said, gee, I thought Laura would have at least made the top 3. And then we get a phone call at 10 o'clock at night from the producer. Hi, John, congratulations. Laura's in the top 3. You're leaving tomorrow for Jamaica at 6:30 in the morning.
Oh, okay.
And I said, you got to be kidding me. I said, what? You're letting me know now, 8 hours ahead of time, that I have to pack? My wife is going to have an aneurysm. And you're telling us we have to get on a flight in so many hours? Somehow we did it. I mean, we'd have to have a pet sitter to look after the dogs. But we made it. But I'll tell you, it was one of my, something I'll always remember, because we were backstage and it got down to Laura and the other girl. And it was very emotional when she won, because it's one of those things what goes around. I mean, here she is watching the show, and now she just won it. And she was a big fan of America's Next Top Model. And no, it was my reaction on the show, I think, kind of says everything. I was shocked. I was just shocked. It was just such a strange thing.
I'd when I was watching the show, I had a feeling that not all the judges wanted her to win, but the public absolutely adored her. Which showed, because obviously they could vote and do the thing on social media, and they absolutely loved her. But yeah, I want to try and get an interview with her, because I love ANTM and I want to know about her experiences. So I'm gonna do that.
I'll send you the link. I'll send you her email, or I'll have her get in touch with you.
I really appreciate that. So on to Axcellerator. I watched that this morning. I say this morning, it's now this evening here at 7:35. So I watched that this morning, and it's on Amazon Prime in the UK. And I wasn't, with any kind of movie, you're never sure what to expect. and I thought John James as a bad guy, that doesn't really sit right in my head, because he's the good guy, he's the, not, I won't say the hero, but he's a nice guy kind of thing. But him as a villain, I'm not so sure. But I actually really enjoyed it. I mean, for me, it was kind of like a mix of part spy thriller, part comedy, part action, and I actually really enjoyed it. Just the
we I was the co-producer on that. We actually set out to make a movie that was sort of that is retro, back to a movie that you would have seen in the 80s. A little touch of Back to the Future, with the Axcellerator device. A very quaint storyline, nothing offensive in it. Some moral stuff thrown in there, and then you throw in a couple of iconic 80s actors, from Sam Jones to Sean Young, to me. It was a lot of fun to make, and we enjoyed making it.
I'd never seen, because I watch a vast amount of American TV shows. Pretty much everything that I watch is American, but I hadn't seen Nora act before. So that was a really pleasant surprise, and she is a really good actress, really good actress. Obviously, she's got good genes,
Thank you.
From you, and some of the lines just cracked me up. Like when it's like Laura calling her own dad a sadistic asshole. She must have loved that. I can say something to my dad and not get in trouble for it.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun on that picture. It was a lot of fun. We really enjoyed it.
You've kind of developed, it seems like you developed a bit of a partnership with David Giancola as well. Have you got any more movies planned?
Well, we'll see. I mean, as I said before we started, the last time I was in London, we were at the St. James, I believe it's the St. James, Prince Andrew Theatre in London, there on the East, where we previewed it at the London Sci-Fi Film Festival. It's tough. Independent film is very expensive. Film is expensive, and it's tough to recoup your money, nickels and pennies at a showing. But we'll have something coming up, I think, this year.
Because you've got a movie I don't know if it's finished yet, Evil at the Door.
Right. That's another friend of mine. That's a thriller.
Can you tell us anything about the story? Like,
well, it's sort of it's a kind of a strange cult, like, and it's a home invasion picture, basically. And and I'm again another bad guy. I like playing bad guys now.
So I mean, I guess it's the difference from playing a good guy for eight something years. And
it's much easier, Tarloke.
Do you have any plans to go back to daytime soaps again? Because I know you're pretty much a veteran, aren't you? But
the last one I did, although I loved the character, I played a psycho doctor, serial killer. Yeah. And it was on As the World Turns, and his name was Rick Decker. And it was, I think, my favorite role. But I remember one day they were starting to combine shows on one set to save money. And I had 35 pages of dialogue. 35 pages, and no teleprompters and no cue cards.
Wow.
And my agent said to me the other day that there was a role coming up on General Hospital, and I said, no. I'm done. It's very hard work.
Wouldn't that be amazing if you did it and Emma Samms was there as Holly Scorpio, like, acting together again?
Well, that maybe I would consider that, but they're just very hard. And I'd have to move to California, and it's a long time gig.
Wow. You've got that amazing, is it 230-acre farm in Cambridge?
Yes, well, I've moved. We've moved now. We live outside of Nashville, Tennessee.
But you now live in Nashville, so
right.
You just enjoy. And I mean, I keep the independent movies coming up. There's a list here that I've got to watch. Hopefully, I can find them somewhere.
They're all out there. You'll find them.
I'm interested in Illegal Aliens.
I'm not even going to go there. That's another hour and a half conversation, Tyler.
Okay. I mean, it's been an amazing hour and 40 minutes. I mean, like, this means a lot to me as a, I grew up watching these shows, and to be able to talk to somebody who was in one of those shows, it's an immense honor, and I want to thank
Well,
you.
thank you, Tarloke. I really enjoyed this, and you're right. You're very a good conversationalist. You keep it light and you show interest. I think you're going to go a long way. I've watched your interviews, and just keep it up.
Oh, you've watched them. Which one was your favorite?
Uh, the In Vogue.
Yes. I mean, that was just crazy. I mean, I had this thought. I know you've experienced lockdown yourself, different sort of, things. And I said in March last year, when we had a national lockdown, I want to do something with this time. It'll be such a waste to not do anything, or not to, learn about my relationship, learn more about God, or do more practical things, learn new skills. And I thought, why don't I create content? Because I'm on YouTube every single day. And then it came back to August, and I still hadn't done anything. I was like, right, I'm going to do something now. So I emailed Jordan Robinson, and I thought that they haven't got no chance.
Well, that's why I said, Tarloke, I'd like to give you a hand up, and this will help you, and then you'll get more people, and the next thing you know,
hopefully I want to try and go through the Dynasty.
One of those social media stars, Tarloke.
I haven't got any illusions. I just enjoy talking to people, making friends with people, and
that's all. Yeah, but that's good, because you're coming from a pure place.
And hopefully I can get Laura too, because I would love to talk about A&T, and that would be so much fun.
Well, I'll send her your email. I'll put you two in touch, and I'm sure she'll do it for you.
And I'll start. I think I'm going to start watching SWAT. Because I want to see what she's like in that. So
she plays Holly Mills, I think. Holly Mills. Yeah. And she's not. I think she did 8 shows last year, and she's up to. Although this year was cut short and kind of strange because of COVID.
Yeah. How do you? I know we were sort of due to finish up, but how? I mean, with the US, obviously, we're not going to go into politics. We're not going to do that. But it's been quite a tumultuous few months. What do you expect coming from tomorrow? I mean, do you hope for anything? I know you're a Republican, right?
I actually have no political affiliation now.
You don't? Okay.
No. And frankly, my politics is, I believe in a higher source, and that's what I believe in, and that's what I think truth always comes out, and truth is always the defining factor. Yeah. As far as I don't think anything is going to happen tomorrow. I think he's going to, that's my opinion. It's just going to be an inauguration. I think that the problem is that there's just too much media and hype in this, and it's just crazy. It's just, I can't watch it, and I can't read it.
I honestly don't look at it, but I'm hoping with regards to COVID, we've got a light
on this whole COVID thing. I mean, you don't know what to believe. I mean, that people just don't know what to believe.
Yeah.
Is it the same as the flu? Is it hard? Same amount of people die from the flu, but it's just, you don't know what to believe.
I have hope. I've stressed about it. I've looked far too far in the future for for this to finish, but now I'm concentrating on now. Yeah. Enjoying the moment that I'm in, enjoying what I'm doing, get to make new friends. Whoever thought that I'd get to chat to Jeff Colby, like, hello,
Well, Tarloke, hopefully I'll be back in London at some point, and I'll drop you a line, and we'll see you in London, maybe on another project.
Who knows? But yeah, thank you so much for your time. It was a lot longer than we initially planned, but that's
it's been a while. Yeah, it's an hour and 45. That's good.
But yeah, I'm gonna upload it onto YouTube in the nenext couple of days. See what John James the name attracts. So we'll see how this goes. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. Right, you enjoy the rest of the day.
You too, my friend, and good luck now.
Thank you. I'll see ya. Bye.